So I think I'm getting better with this consistency thing, right? Like 2 episodes of Will Talks About Games in a row. And hopefully they're a week apart. Because it's Tuesday night as I'm recording this. But yeah, welcome back to another episode of Will Talks About Games. And you didn't have to wait several months to get this one either. Ain't that amazing? Yeah. So I'm Will, and this is my podcast where I talk about games. It's pretty on the nose, right? That's the one thing you gotta like about this. When you look it up, it pretty much tells you what you're gonna get. A guy named Will, and he's gonna talk about games. So if that's what you're looking for, here's have at it. So for those of you watching this on YouTube, the game footage you're watching, it has nothing to do with the podcast itself. It's just random footage of games that I like to play. And you can check it out. And you can just have this running in the background while you're, I don't know, eating, cleaning, lounging back, exercising, hanging out, doing whatever. Or even playing video games. You can have this in the background while you play video games. Listen to a podcast about video games while you play video games. And to those of you who are on YouTube, if you're new to this channel, I like to do everything from reviews to previews to tech unboxings. I just took a look at the ROG. I just took a look at a mobile controller made by ROG a few days ago, so check that out. So if this sounds good to you, you want to join the Mafia, hit that big red subscribe button, and I'm going to make you a made man. And if you want to do me one better, click that bell icon and make sure all of your notifications are turned on. That way you'll be the first to know whenever I drop new content. And while you're here, make sure you like and make sure you comment. Let me know what you think. And for those of you who are listening on platforms other than YouTube, you can go to my YouTube page using the link tree in the description. So check that out. And if this is your first time listening to the podcast, and it's available on Spotify, Apple, Amazon, pretty much anywhere you go to listen to podcasts. So if this is your first time coming across this, make sure you add me to your RSS feed. So in this edition of Will Talks About Games, I'm going to talk about some Assassin's Creed news. I think you might know which one I'm referring to. I'm also going to talk about the game Mindseye for a little bit. There's some insight that came out about its development recently. And of course some more Microsoft related news. Basically some more news about Game Pass and some of my own personal insights. So, let's get started. So we're going to start by talking about Assassin's Creed and its publisher, UbiSoft. So last week we learned that UbiSoft had canceled an Assassin's Creed game that would have taken place during the post-Civil War Reconstruction period and would put players in the role of a black escaped slave who's then recruited by the assassins and would be sent after the Ku Klux Klan and other white supremacy groups at the time. So this is according to gaming newsletter GameFile, which is the Substack that was started by Stefan Totilo, I believe. I think he's a former Kotaku writer. But according to that, 3 anonymous sources had stated that the game was canceled, in part due to the reveal of Yasuke, who's the black samurai who you play as in Assassin's Creed Shadows, and by the way, is a real-life figure, despite whatever certain online groups tell you. And also in part due to the uneasy political climate in the United States. Developers working on the project were upset because it looked like that Ubisoft was already bending the knee to certain groups of people, and I'll talk about that in a second, and trying to avoid a perceived controversy, even though the game hadn't been announced yet. Now, it should be noted that this wouldn't be the first time that the franchise dealt with slavery, just not at the end of the Civil War period. If you remember Assassin's Creed, Assassin's Creed Freedom Cry, which was a spinoff to the Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag, put players in the role of Ayawale, I believe his name, Adewale. I had to look up his name, Adewale is he freed African slaves throughout the Caribbean and took on the Templars. There was also the I believe it was the 2012 game, Assassin's Creed Liberation, which was actually a spinoff to Assassin's Creed 3. In this game, you took control as Avel, I think her name is. Yeah, Aveline. Yeah, I had to look that name up too. But you took control of her as she took on the Templars throughout the city of New Orleans toward the end of the French, around the time of the French and Indian War, during its aftermath, and of course, and it was happening alongside the stretch of the events that were leading up to and taking place during Assassin's Creed 3. So, what really changed during this time? Well, first of all, both these games came out like in the early teens. Like Liberation came out in 2012, and Freedom Cry came out around like 2013. And of course, since then, like in the like 10 or 12 years since, you had this rise of alt-right gaming grifter YouTubers. Guys like Asmongold, The Quartering, Geeks and Gamers, all of those. So, of course, naturally, it's gotten to this point where whenever they see a black character or a female character or just somebody who's not a straight white male, they cry about the game being woke or DEI or SJW or whatever the buzzword is this week. Because it might be something else by the time you listen to this. I mean, like, you might be listening to this maybe a year or two down the road and they might have come up with another term, but that's not important. And when you talk about the American political climate, you see things like President 47 trying to change the Smithsonian so that references to slavery and civil rights are removed. And of course, the whole thing about critical race theory, where you've got Fox News or whoever trying to tell you that's taught to elementary school children to make white kids feel bad about being white, when what it actually is, it's a college level course which teaches that race is a social construct and how this social construct affects things like law and media and other aspects of society. Of course, you can explain this to people and they won't get that. And of course, the grifters have latched onto that too. So naturally, if you see a UbiSoft game about a black man killing the KKK, there's a certain crowd of people who are gonna be in their feelings about it. Like if you think Yasuke pissed people off, wait till you see. Imagine what would happen if this game came out. Now going back to Ubisoft, like this wouldn't be the first time they've pussyfooted around these issues, for lack of a better term. If you remember back in 2020, I believe it was, or 20, well, yeah, because this was like at the height of the George Floyd protests. If you remember back in 2020, there was a mobile game they put out called Tom Clancy's Elite Squad. And this was a mobile RPG game where you basically unlocked various heroes from various Tom Clancy games, including Sam Fisher's Splinter Cell. And you basically took on a terrorist group called Umbra. And the organization's logo was a black raised fist, which was suspiciously similar to the raised fist that you see associated with the Black Lives Matter movement. And the game was about like this terrorist group infiltrating various left-wing protests. So remember, this was around the time of all the George Floyd protests throughout the nation. So naturally, the timing of this is incredibly suspect. Of course, they released a statement apologizing, made a donation to the NAACP, and of course, they removed the icon from its game. But you got to look at stuff like this, and you got to see that there's no accident on what they're trying to do. And by the way, this was around that same period where they were. It came out that they were pushing all these sexual harassment allegations all under the rug. Matter of fact, I even talked about this either on an earlier edition of the podcast or on my YouTube channel itself. If I can find those videos, I'm gonna link to them in the description so you'll know what I'm talking about. But yeah, so really one final thing, right? Now I want y'all to think about this, right? If Ubisoft pulled the plug on the game because of quote unquote the political climate, who are they afraid of upsetting? And also, what do you think this says about the company itself? That they're worried about pissing off this particular type of gamer. But with that, I think we're going to move on. Before we move on, though, for those of you who are looking for games where you can take on KKK members, I will recommend Wolfenstein: The New Colossus, Mafia 3, and Red Dead Redemption 2. Alright, so next up, I want to talk about Mindseye. If you remember, that game came out earlier this year and it came out to overwhelmingly bad ratings. It was created by a company called Build a Rocket Boy. Build a Rocket Boy was founded by former Rockstar boss Leslie Benzies. You know, Rockstar as in GTA Rockstar. So recently, dozens of employees and former employees at the company had signed an open letter to the studio's leadership and are joining up with the Game Workers branch of the Independent Workers of Great Britain. So they're using it to call out their leadership. And I'm going to link to the letter in the description, but we're going to go through it. Alright. Employees and ex-workers at Build a Rocket Boy, BARB, together with the Game Workers branch of the Independent Workers of Great Britain, are writing to address the long-standing disrespect and mistreatment of your staff. For years, you have expected them to adapt to your every whim, with those in disagreement being shut down or cast aside. We estimate a UK majority of 230 to 300 workers across the company have now lost their livelihoods. These layoffs happen because you repeatedly refuse to listen to your workforce's years of experience, resulting in one of the worst video game launches this decade. Here are just a few of the many issues we have faced under your management. Lack of transparency and communication. You have consistently failed to effectively communicate with the workers whose expertise the money relies on. Information has been sparse and vague, with you often making radical changes to the way we worked with little or no input from those affected. Unbearable levels of overtime. In the 4 months leading up to the launch of Mindseye, you implemented a mandatory 8 hours of overtime per week for every single employee. Time off and lieu toil was given at a rate of 7 hours back for every 8 hours worked, but many have not been able to take this time off due to your continued requests for extra high priority work even after launch. Now I want to stop there for a second. Now, I guess time off in lieu. I don't know how that works because this is more of a British thing than an American thing. So usually, every place I've had to work with overtime, provided I'm not a salaried employee, they've given what's called like time and a half. So I would do if I worked like 8 hours overtime, I'd get like 4 more on top of that. So I guess that's not the way it works here. And you're talking about a mandatory 8 hours of overtime. Like a lot of time, like a lot of work I do involves like contracting organizations. So I remember one time when I lived in Tulsa, I was I had to like come in on the weekends, and because I was working at an hourly wage, I had to actually go through the contractor agency to get those hours approved. Of course, I was able to get them approved very easily because it was a very important assignment that the crew was working on. But that's neither here nor there. So let's keep going. Disastrous handling of redundancies. We believe you have consistently mishandled the redundancy process, causing confusion and distress for all staff. Employees have received misinformation, been handed dismissal notices with the wrong notice periods, and have been put in the wrong teams so that their performances were scored by the wrong people. These and other errors have potentially resulted in the wrongful dismissal of dozens of staff members. These and many other issues, some of which have been made public already, have caused pain and stress for your employees. Our experience at the company has been one of burnout, job insecurity, health issues, and the failure of a game that many of us have put years of our lives into. Barb needs to change. CEOs need to take a backseat and allow the skilled people who remain at the company to forge the path ahead. We demand the following: 1. A public apology for this mistreatment of employees and proper compensation for laid off employees. 2. The option for remaining employees on redundancy notice to either work their notice period or take payment in lieu of notice. Pylon. So I'll stop right there again. So I get so that kind of sounds similar to where they've been letting a lot of people go and offering them a buyout of sorts. But going forward, 3. A concerted, meaningful, and documented effort to improve conditions and processes within the company, including the acknowledgement of the IWGB as a trade union. And 4. A commitment to use official external partners to action any future redundancies and prevent unfair treatment. Mark Gerhard and Leslie Benzies, you often refer to your employees as family. But we ask you to consider, is this really how you treat your own? In solidarity, 93 BARB employees and ex-employees, IWGB game workers. So that family line often hits different because as somebody who was laid off twice within the same 12-month period, the second time from Microsoft, that family bullshit often tends to ring hollow. And I'm going off on a tangent here, but if any workplace tells you they're family, then they're full of shit. Because at the end of the day, the only family I got is the one that I come back to, right? So no matter how bad things got in my household, my parents would never even think about cutting off me or my brother, you know? And I have cousins, I've got a brother, I got uncles, I got aunts. Not a single one of them would ever cut me off to appease some fake-ass shareholder, you dig? And also, when I got married last year, my wife never expected me to cut off anybody on my family, and just like I never expected her to cut off anyone on her family. Because that's not how a fucking family operates. So, any organization that talks about family, then they're full of shit. But back to the letter, though. It seems like this comes down to the same old crunch, same old employee abuse that we've heard about time and time again at places like BioWare, Rockstar, Take-Two, Electronic Arts, the same old. And with Mindseye, I remember vividly, I didn't even hear about the game for the first time until a few months before it came out. I saw a lot of people on TikTok, influencers, hyping up the game, so I was intrigued by it. But the more I saw of it, I really didn't see a whole lot about the game itself. So I kind of knew there was some funny business in the background, and little did I know how bad it was. If it would have went well, it would have been a great way to keep fans tied up before the new Grand Theft Auto game comes out. But this whole thing, everything I hear about the game, the whole thing just seems off like a scam. For one thing, I'm hearing the game was built from assets from I think it was called Everywhere or Everybody or whatever. So let me look this up real quick. So it was Everywhere. That's right. Anyway, for those that don't know, Everywhere was an ambitious project that was created by Leslie Benzies, Matthew Smith, and Colin Entwisle. So these were 3 Rockstar Games employees. After they left Rockstar, they created an independent studio in 2016 called Royal Circus Games. So eventually they would change their name to Build a Rocket Boy because apparently RCG was a little too similar to Rockstar Games or whatever. So basically Everywhere is this big, huge metaverse-style game platform where you can build whatever. And originally Mindseye was supposed to be a game within the game that would be released in episodes. But eventually they put that in it as its own standalone commercial project, so they can develop revenue for the continued development of the Everywhere platform. So I actually played the beta a few years back. I mean, I guess I don't have any too big complaints about the Everywhere game, It's ambitious for what it tried to do. Um, I'm not sure if the game's still active. Maybe I might try to dive in some more. But yeah, that was their big project. And as you know, it was published by IO Interactive. And I know IO Interactive themselves. This is less them because apparently they were caught off guard with how bad things had gone. As a matter of fact, two senior execs at Build a Rocket Boy, Chief Legal Officer Riley Grainberner, I can't pronounce the last name, but it's Graebner, and CFO Paul Bland. So they had left the company like about a week before the launch of the game. They didn't specify why, I guess it's easy to see like why they would not want to be associated with that. And of course, there's been layoffs and stuff, and that's what led to this past letter. So I guess again, it's the same tale that we hear at so many other companies about crunch and abuse and stuff. But I think there's one major thing to take away from it. It's that just because you have the name of somebody who's attached to that big name game you like, in this case Leslie Benzies, that doesn't necessarily mean that that same success is going to translate to that next project. No doubt we all remember Mighty Number Nine and Keiji Inafune, but that in and of itself is another story. So I want to talk about some Microsoft news. So last time on the podcast, we talked about the Game Pass Ultimate price hike. So naturally, as you know, a lot of people were angry. A lot of people were canceling their Game Pass subscriptions, and of course, you had people within the industry calling them out. You remember during the Activision thing, the Activision purchase, Microsoft stated that the acquisition of Activision was not going to lead to a Game Pass price increase. So, depending on how you view the price increase or its timing or its motive, um, it's clear that Microsoft walked back on that word. So last week, several people throughout several Game Pass subscribers throughout different regions such as Germany, India, and Ireland, they got notices that the rate increase will be paused for the time being, as long as you're still subscribed to Game Pass and you have your auto billing on. So if you live in Germany, India, Ireland, Poland, and South Korea, and I guess certain other territories, then the Game Pass increase won't happen as long as you still got your auto billing on. But if you're a new subscriber or you canceled your subscription, then you resubscribe, then you'll be hit with the new rate. So unfortunately for those of us in the United States and those of us in the United Kingdom at least, the Game Pass price hike is still going to be on. So since the announcement of the price hike, Microsoft has basically been in damage control mode. Recently, Dustin Blackwell made some statements to The Verge. As you might have suspected, Microsoft has been in full on damage control mode since then. For instance, in an interview with The Verge, Dustin Blackwell has provided several statements. And, quote, Game Pass Ultimate will now include access to more than 400 titles globally. This includes a majority of our partners who want to continue to bring their future games to Xbox Game Pass. And he also states that we're now giving access to more than 75 day one releases each year. And that's a 50% increase over the day one titles we provided last year. So what that means is that they're bringing in more titles from third parties who work with Game Pass, and they've also featured more releases. They've also put more titles on Game Pass that were released on day one. So take for instance, Clear Obscure Expedition 33 that hit Game Pass the same day that it came out. And of course, as you know, there's the Ubisoft Plus Classics, which is also going to be new, which is going to be part of Game Pass Ultimate. So what that is, it provides access to a selection of Ubisoft games across console, PC, and cloud. And next November, Fortnite Crew is going to be coming to Game Pass. So for those that don't know what that is, it gives users access to the Fortnite Battle Pass along with 1,000 V-Bucks and other perks here and there. They've also mentioned that the Xbox Rewards program, where you can basically earn points by playing Game Pass games, is also going to be tweaked somewhat because subscribers can now earn up to $100 per year, which equates to 100,000 points. So again, it's your mileage is going to vary on if these things are enough to justify an extra $10 a month. So for a lot of gamers, it pretty much isn't because there's been a lot of mass cancellations. And of course, by the time you're listening to this podcast, the new ROG Ally and the ROG Xbox Ally X are out. So of course, Microsoft's making this big push for everything being an Xbox and being able to play Game Pass everywhere. So with people reacting natively to this Game Pass price increase, that might hurt that strategy going forward because you already got a device which at $600, well, the low version at $600 and the higher version is at 1,000. Both of those are basically higher than the cost of an Xbox Series X, at least for the time being. I know they increased the prices on the consoles, but it's going to be a hard sell for the Game Pass going forward. So let me know what you guys think. Did you cancel and are you still subscribed to Game Pass? And I guess, do you plan on getting an Xbox ROG Ally? And what, in your eyes, would justify the price increase to you? If there is a way to justify the price increase. So, in related news, around the same time that the Game Pass Ultimate price hike was increased, we discovered that Microsoft had lost $300 million in sales on Call of Duty Black Ops 6 due to it being on Game Pass. So, as you know, one of the perks of the Xbox Game Pass program, at least Ultimate, is that you get access to first party Microsoft games from day one. So, that includes stuff like, say, Halo, Forza Horizon, the more recent South of Midnight. And with Bethesda being acquired, you got stuff like Doom: The Dark Ages, the Indiana Jones game, and Starfield. So at least it's that way for Ultimate. With Premium now, and that's the $15 tier. You get the Xbox published games within 12 months of launch. So what it is with Activision being part of the Xbox Game Studios family now, that means Call of Duty is now an Xbox Studios title because it's basically owned by Microsoft. So naturally, it's going to launch day one on Game Pass, and of course, Call of Duty is a big yearly seller. Now, internally, from a business sense, there's been a lot of concern over this tactic, particularly with a game like Call of Duty. Matter of fact, the former head of Activision, Bobby Kotick, had stated during the 2023 FTC trials that he didn't think that adding games like Call of Duty to subscription services made commercial sense. So, quote, I have a general aversion to the idea of multi game subscription services. Maybe part of it is being in Los Angeles and having large, big media companies move their content to these subscription streaming services, and the business results have suffered. By the way, this is from a Kotaku article talking about the lost sales. Now, while this obviously hurts business, us as gamers, this is quite beneficial to us because one of the streams of Game Pass is that you could like play games that you wouldn't normally otherwise play, and save a game like games like Starfield and Redfall, which I didn't see as being that bad, but a lot of gamers didn't like. You could play those games and not have to worry about like spending money on them if you didn't like them. And with Call of Duty being a year release, that would seem like a no brainer as far as like gamers who own Xboxes are concerned. So keep in mind, last year's Black Ops 6 was the first time that a Call of Duty game hit Game Pass from day one. So while so according to Circana's U.S. market data, the sales of Black Ops 6 were 23% higher than Modern Warfare 3. However, 82% of those sales were on PlayStation versus Xbox and PC. On the flip side, subscription gaming services would also see a 16% jump year over year following the release of Black Ops 6. So if the move to Game Pass would have cost the company 300 million in lost sales, and keep in mind I'm still reading from the Kotaku article, but numbers don't lie. So if Black Ops on Game Pass would have cost Microsoft 300 million on sales, then they would have needed around 15 million players to subscribe for Game Pass Ultimate for 1 year to make that up, or for 1 month to make that up. Sorry, or they would just need like 1.25 million throughout the course of an entire year, and they would need more of those sales if all those players were on Game Pass PC, because as you know that has a smaller price than Game Pass Ultimate. Now, if Black Ops 7 were to see a similar release in sales, then Microsoft would only need 10 million new signups for Ultimate for 1 month, or just 834,000 throughout the course of the year when you take the new price hike into consideration. Um, I'm not sure if I can see this happening though, because you got a lot of people canceling, but then again, you've got a lot of diehards still subscribe to the service, so who knows? If they took that kind of loss like last year, then with the game releasing next month, we're gonna see how that's gonna go this year. Now, circling back to Game Pass itself, there are rumors that the company is testing a free tier of Game Pass, which is supported by ads. And according to Bloomberg, Microsoft CFO Amy Hood has asked the Xbox brand to find other ways to increase profit. So that's part of why you're getting these price hikes and things like that. Now, with the losses on Call of Duty, it remains to be seen like how Microsoft is going to approach the whole Game Pass thing going forward. I mean, can we see a situation where where only certain first party games are day and day one, or if Game Pass Ultimate doesn't include Call of Duty, or maybe like the only way you can get Call of Duty through Game Pass is if you subscribe to Ultimate. So again, let me know what you guys think. So there's a deeper discussion we had about Microsoft and the Xbox brand. So I'm already like spending too much on this podcast. Well, not money wise, but like time wise. Because actually I'm recording this segment like Friday morning because I had a couple things happen throughout the next few days, but throughout the past couple of days. But enough of that. There's a deeper discussion we had, and I think on the next edition of the podcast, I'm going to be speaking on some of these things. So we got some very sad news to report. Tomonobu Itagaki, the creator of games such as Dead or Alive, and he's the person who revamped the Ninja Gaiden franchise on Xbox. He sadly passed away yesterday. So this was confirmed by a message that popped up on his Facebook page that was posted by someone who was close to him but was written by him. And these were his last words. Quote, "Words I leave behind, the flame of my life is finally about to go out. If this message has been posted, it means that the time has come. I am no longer in this world. This final post has been entrusted to someone dear to me. My life was a series of battles, and I kept on winning. I know I caused trouble for many along the way, but I followed my convictions, and fought to the very end. I had no regrets. Only one thing weighs on me. I'm deeply sorry to all my fans that I couldn't bring you a new work. I truly am. That's just how it is. So it goes, Tomonobu Itagaki." So, yeah, like that's some pretty sad news all around. Rest in peace to the man. My heart goes out to his family, his friends, and his fans, of which I am one of them. Um, He's quite controversial throughout the gaming industry, but he's one of the big innovators when it comes to Japanese game development. You think about guys like Hideo Kojima, um, Shigeru Miyamoto, and other noted figures. You got to put his name up there. I'm probably gonna go into a deep dive of him, maybe like do a YouTube video or something, or maybe talk about him in another edition of the podcast. Um, but for now, rest in peace to Itagaki. All right, because I like to end these things by talking about something positive and things I like, I want to talk about I Am Your Beast. This is a first person shooter by Strange Scaffold. First of all, Strange Scaffold is a black owned game development studio, and they put out a lot of unique stuff. They put out El Paso Elsewhere, which is basically Max Payne with demons, and they recently put out a Ninja Turtles game called Tactical Takedown. So if you're looking for something new and unique in games, then just look for their logo and you know the product's going to be something good. Now, moving on to I Am Your Beast. You play as an ex soldier, and your goal is to take out your former military unit. There are several levels, and your goal is to make it through them as fast as possible. Sometimes you got to activate laptops, other times you have to destroy satellites or some other object, but most of the time you got to kill each enemy in the area. You got to do so as quickly and efficiently as possible. You can shoot them, stomp them to death, hit them with throwing knives. You can drop beehives on them. There's all kinds of crazy ways you can take out your opponents. And when you complete a level, you get graded. So it's going to make you want to go back into the level to try to get a better grade, to try to complete one of the mini objectives. You know, just try to do better as possible. It's got that arcade Twitch style action to it. So the game is depicted in a very minimalist style. You got these polygon graphics, and the storyline is just told by text on the background. It works for the type of game that this is because it makes you want to get to the action as quickly as possible. So to best describe the gameplay, it's this mix of Hotline Miami meets John Wick, but it's basically a first-person shooter. So the game is available on PC, PlayStation 5, and Xbox Series X. Matter of fact, at the time of this recording, October 17th, 2025, it's available on Game Pass, so you can check it out for free. Matter of fact, a few years ago, I did a video about the game's demo, and I'm pleased to discover that the full product is even more awesome than that demo. So that's I Am Your Beast. Check it out. And with that, that's how we're going to end it. This took a little bit long. Well, not so much longer, as I kind of took a break between a few days because of some stuff, but that's neither here nor there. But anyway, you made it to the end of the podcast. So thanks for listening or thanks for watching. Again, make sure you subscribe if you're on YouTube. If you're not on YouTube, make sure you add me to your RSS feed, and go to my YouTube channel and subscribe to that. I got a ton of stuff that I'm working on. And by the way, it's Steam Next Fest this week. So go to Steam. If you got a PC and you game on your PC, go to Steam and check out some game demos. I'm pretty sure there's some cool stuff that's coming out that you're gonna like. But for now, also drop a comment and let me know what you think about any part of this episode. I got tons of more stuff on the way, and I got a few hooks for the next few episodes of the podcast. So have a great weekend, and I'm Audi 51,000G.